In this video, I'm going to show you one of the most exciting games ever played with the Traxler Gambit. It's a really cool game, you will see, with a lot of spectacular ideas to try to play for a win with the black pieces as early as move 1. And there's no better way of learning this opening by looking at the stem game of this line by the main expert, and the name is Karel Traxler. He is a Czech master, was famous for some chess compositions, but also for this opening he invented himself. And the game we are going to have a look at, it's a game he played back in 1890. He's playing with the black pieces, and with white it's Jörg Reinisch. And this game has it all, guys. You will definitely enjoy. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you would like to learn more about the Traxler Gambit and many other openings. So let's have a look. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, knight f6. This is the two knights variation, and we are inviting with our last move white to go for the move knight g5, attacking the pawn on f7, which is difficult to defend. Of course, the main continuation here is to put a pawn on d5, but the Traxler Gambit just ignores the pawn on f7, and we are playing here the move bishop c5. And this is a shock for a lot of your opponents, because they think, hey, that pawn on f7, that can just be captured in two different ways. Well, the main continuation here is to take with a knight on f7, so that you attack both the queen and the rook. And it looks as if white is already winning by move 5. But the key move of our system is to sacrifice our bishop with check on f2. So two pieces are hanging and the third piece is going to be sacrificed. How cool is that? Well, white has different options here. In a separate video I had already a look at a move king takes the bishop. And that's of course one of the critical continuations. So make sure to check out that video as well. In another video we will have a look at the move king f1, ignoring the bishop, which is actually a very important line as well. But in this game, Reinisch played here this move king to e2. So he's ignoring the bishop as well and saying, well, both your queen and rook are still hanging. And maybe later I'm going to take that bishop on f2. But now black goes for knight d4 check, forcing move. And the king is in trouble. Where should the king go to? Well, it doesn't have many squares. Of course, it can still capture the bishop on f2, but then we get a favorable version of lines we had to see already in the other video. So that's not a good idea for white at all. And Reinisch played here the move king to d3. So the king is going away from the checks, and well, the threat is still there. Like the queen is just about to be taken by that knight, and you would expect black to move the queen away. But Traxler, he has already this clear vision that he just wanted to play for the initiative. He wants to ignore his opponent's ideas. And look what he did now. This is an absolutely amazing move. White can capture the queen, but black played the move b5. And you may think, what is happening here? The queen is hanging. Black is attacking the bishop with its pawn. And one of the ideas, of course, is that if the bishop would take the pawn, for instance, you can even capture the knight on f7. So the bishop still got to defend that knight. But in the game there followed the move bishop b3. We will discuss that in a second. But what about knight captures queen? That's, of course, a crucial question for our understanding of this line. Well, Traxler's idea is to capture with the pawn the bishop on c4. This is a check, and the king has a choice. If you take that pawn on c4, now the bishop comes with check to a6, and the king has to go somewhere. If the king goes to b4, let's say it runs away to the side of the board, another check on b8 will follow, and the king will go to a5, and it looks as if there's nothing really immediate happening. But the simplest way of playing here as black is to play the move bishop e2. How beautiful is that? Two bishops standing next to each other. The bishop covers all the remaining squares from the white queen, and of course bishop on e2 attacks the queen. What's going to happen is that white will be forced to give up its queen. After that, the knight can be captured and black is just a piece up. And of course you got to understand that the white king is still in deep trouble, so the attack is still going on. Now let's go back a few moves, because this pawn on c4 doesn't have to be taken. If you go with the king to c3, then the knight captures on e4 with check. Now if the king captures on c4, we basically get the same idea. So the main alternative is to go away with the king to b4, but now we give another check with the pawn. We are going after the king. If the king goes to a4, now there's a beautiful checkmating pattern as there's knight c5 check. The king cannot go anywhere. All the squares have been taken away by black's pieces. King a3, and this is one of the most amazing mating patterns I've ever seen. Two knights together with two pawns, checkmating the king on a3. Beautiful idea. Instead of king a4, king a3 is an alternative, but now knight b5 is going to be played anyway. It's king a4, king still attacks the knight, but still we play knight c5 check. King can only capture the knight, and the bishop comes to a6. Everything is nicely protected. There's no chance for the white king to capture anything. Well, the pawn on a5 can be captured because the bishop obstructs the protection by the rook on a8. But bishop b7 is a discovered check. Now the king got to choose. There are two squares available. If the king goes to b4, look at this, guys. Rook a4 check. And after king goes to b5, it's bishop a6 with checkmate. Beautiful idea. Therefore, king b4 is not good. If you play king b5, there follows the move c6 check. And there are, again, a few options. If you go to b4, we have the same idea once again. After king to b6, well, that's one idea. There's king takes d8. And this king has just been caught in a mating net. Rook a6 is the main idea. Bishop protects the knight. The only move for white here to create a square for your king is the move d4, interfering on this diagonal. But after capturing en passant, the bishop protects the knight once again. White has one check on g5 with the bishop. But now king c8, and there's nothing white can do against this move. Rook a6 coming next, and it's game over. There are many mating ideas, in fact. Even knight a4 with a double check on the king is also checkmate very soon. So let's go back one more time. After the move c6, king takes c4 is the alternative. But now it's d5 with check. And after king to b4, it's rook a4 check, king c3 only move. And now you have a choice. There are many mating patterns available. Bishop comes to d4 is a nice one. Also the move rook c4 looks really good as it's checkmate in one as well. So we see that the queen cannot really be captured. Now back to the game. This is a long introduction, but there are so many exciting lines to share with you. Bishop b3 played in the game, and now there's still this problem with the queen and rook hanging, but Traxler goes for it. Knight takes e4, boom. Capturing a valuable pawn in the center, and white is for a choice. Is he going to take the queen or is he going to take the knight? Because, well, you got to do something. Well, first things first, if you take the knight, there is the move d5 check, and it's a typical idea we have seen in the other video as well. We are planning to get our bishop to f5. If you take on d5, it's bishop f5 with check. The king cannot go anywhere, can just capture the pawn. Now it's queen f6. King has to go to f4. Now bishop takes c2. Discover check, king g4, and queen f5 is checkmate. Beautiful cooperation of black's pieces once again. No time for bishop takes d5. If the king captures on e5 right away, it's queen e7 check. If you go to f4, it's queen f6 with checkmate again. All the squares have been taken away from the white king. So that's just not possible. If you take on d5 instead, it's bishop b7. Another mating pattern. The king cannot go anywhere. Final move is king to d3, but then it's bishop f5 with check. You develop the bishop with gain of time. It's the main idea of launching your d-pawn after king c3. One beautiful typical idea is knight e2 check. You're giving up the knight to vacate the d4 square for the bishop to come there with check, king b4. Another tempo move, a5. If you go to a3, it's bishop c5 with checkmate. King cannot go anywhere. If you take on b5, just queen to d7. All the squares are covered, so the king can't go anywhere. So it's winning in all these lines. But now, finally, back to the game again. After knight takes d8, what is black's idea? Well, there is knight c5 check. The king cannot go anywhere apart from c3. And do you see the follow-up? Well, the main move is knight e2 check. Queen captures, of course. You don't want to let the opponent's attacker stay on the board. Bishop d4. King b4, only move. And now it's a5 check. If you go to a3, it's b4 with checkmate. So therefore the pawn was captured on b5. But now it's bishop a6. Setting up a check, attacking the queen. But look, queen takes a5. Now normal people would have just captured the queen on e2. With a check, that's a very good move, of course. But Traxler played a very cynical move. Bishop d3. He just wants to show that he doesn't need to capture the queen to play for a mating attack with these 4 pieces. The king cannot really do much. Went to b4, but now the knight comes to a6 with check. All these squares are covered by the bishops. King can only go to the a file. If you go to a3, it's bishop c5 check. King a4, and now the knight comes back to b4 with discovered check, mate. Because bishop also covers the b5 square in the game. There followed the move king a4 instead. And now the same idea was executed by Traxler. He played the move knight b4 check. King can only capture the knight on b4. And now it's the move c5 checkmate with a pawn. And look at it. Bishop protects the pawn. Other bishop covers also a lot of squares. The rook covers all the squares on the a file. So that's a beautiful checkmate by Karel Traxler. And it's one of the reasons why I started to play the Traxler Gambit myself. I hope you liked this video. Let me know what you think. Do you would like to see any other interesting games covered here on the channel? Let me know. I mean, Traxler games, of course. Many other games are interesting to discuss as well. But I want you to become familiar with the ins and outs of this opening and crush your opponent just from the get-go. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel and soon much more on this channel. Bye bye.